The second chapter, The Comedy of Mistakes. It was between the two world wars exactly the time when England's colonial power was on the decline. 2:40 a.m. on the 21st of April 1926. Her mother was undergoing the agony of giving birth. However, the process of giving birth ran into some problems. The medical team rushed to the palace, 17 Brompton Street, the expensive district of Mayfair. The medical team decided for her mother to have a cesarean delivery. The baby was a girl, the first child of Albert and Elizabeth. A week later, she was baptized according to Christian rituals in the chapel of the Buckingham Palace. Albert, the father of this infant, was the second son of the King of England, George V. Albert's elder brother, Edward, had not got married. At that time, nobody could ever have guessed that the newborn girl would become the Queen of England one day, since they thought Edward would get married and would have a child. George V died in 1936, and his elder son, Edward, became the King of England as Edward VIII. But things got a bit complex for Edward. The new King of England fell in love with a divorced American lady named Wallis Simpson and intended to marry her. Based on the rules of the Church of England, people had to get married only once in their lives. And the second marriage after the divorce was only possible if the ex-spouse had passed away. However, the ex-husband of Miss Simpson was still alive, and according to the English law, this lady did not have the right to get married again. The courts of England approved this law and would act upon it. Therefore, no court would consent to accept the king's marriage with a divorced American lady. This was not the first time when the king's marriage faced obstacles. In the 16th century, Henry VIII, the King of England, had problems in divorcing his wife and marrying another woman. Because in those days the religion of England conformed to the Catholic Church of Rome, and divorce was not permitted by the church. For this reason, the king revoked the conformity to the Catholic Church of Rome, and he appointed himself as the head of the religion in England, and according to his decree, divorce was permitted. The king's minister who opposed this act was beheaded. But then, in the 20th century, Edward could not act the same. Now the English people were civilized. On the other hand, Edward would not like Miss Simpson go away. Edward was a customer for the whorehouses in Chinese style in England. His sexual scandals brought about the defamation of the residents of the Buckingham Palace. It was Miss Simpson who saved him from the Chinese whorehouses. However, Edward's mother, who was in fact considered as the Mother Queen, was concerned about the influence of the American Simpson on his son, the King of England. She felt that Miss Simpson was controlling Edward. The English intelligence service agents reported that Miss Simpson, in addition to having sexual relations with Edward before marriage, had sexual relations with Duke Leinster, a rich merchant and a married engineer. Also, Joseph Kennedy, the American ambassador to London, defined this American lady as a prostitute. However, the lower strata and the workers of the society approved of the marriage of Edward and Simpson. It seemed to them that one person out of the closed system of aristocracy could enter this ring, even though this infiltrator was a prostitute. The destiny of many lands, colonies, and countries depended on the relation of this lady and the king. The sexual problems were not Edward's only problems. His political views were also out of tune. Edward would openly oppose the policies of the then government of England. He refused to accept the views of the cabinet ministers. Edward did not also support the international community. Nazis finally took power in Germany. The English politicians were very concerned about the kings, such as Edward. The war with Germany was imminent. The English nation did not want to start the war with a problem-making king. The then Prime Minister, Stanley Baldwin, who had previously called Miss Simpson the beloved of his country's king as a respectable prostitute, changed his mind and told the king in private that if he would not abdicate, all the cabinet ministers would resign and no political party would form a government for him. All the English aristocrats had retreated and the workers might be provoked by the German and the Russian socialists. Edward's reign was over. On the 10th of December 1936, Edward abdicated, and his brother Albert became as the next king of England, George VI. Now, Elizabeth, whom nobody could have guessed to become the Queen of England and other countries one day, had become the crown princess and would soon sit on the throne after her father. 3 years later, the Second World War set the whole world on fire.